Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now back in 2013, if you wanted to get into Intel's latest socket but didn't have the money for an i3, then you could have opted for one of these. This is the G2020T, a 35 watt CPU which seems to cost more than the ever so slightly more powerful and power hungry non-T model. Instead of spending £1.50, I could have spent just 10 pence. My accountant is not going to be happy. Okay, so I didn't actually buy this one recently. I got it as part of a terrible HP pre-built PC that I found a few months ago, which was so bad that it was powered by a laptop charger and had no PCI Express slot for GPU upgrades. Before I sell it on, or at least try to, I thought we'd give it a chance at gaming. I've paired it with 16 gigs of 1600MHz DDR3 and an RTX 2060 Super, which is admittedly overkill, but at least we know that we're not going to be held back by the graphics card. This thing isn't going to know what's hit it. I've kept things at 1080p throughout because a lower resolution will mean a higher load on the CPU, and that's not something we want, to be honest. Crysis Remastered is up first. While the original game might fare better, this one should still run, but to be sure I chose the low settings. Staring out over the clear tropical water is fine and things stay pretty steady, but turning to face the luscious forest full of enemies tanks our frame times and causes all sorts of stability issues. I'm surprised the game started though, to be honest, and while we're on the subject, here are some examples of games that didn't want to start at all. Cyberpunk just wouldn't load any save game files. I could actually start a new game, but even so, it crashed shortly afterwards. This is something I've experienced with dual-core processors before. This was fixed, but only for those dual-core processors that had 4 threads. Battlefield 5 jammed at this screen and then jammed the whole PC, which meant we had to restart the entire system. Assassin's Creed Valhalla did the same thing, though we didn't have to restart the PC as things just decided to unfreeze after about 10 minutes before the game crashed. Fortnite somehow managed to get stuck at the loading screen while also getting stuck in game at the same time. How is this even possible? We had the HUD and the compass and I could move the camera with the mouse, but it was all still loading simultaneously. Grand Theft Auto 5 also got stuck in an hour-long loading loop. To be fair, GTA will sometimes load, but when it does, you might get missing textures, pop-in, and a whole lot of frame rate and frame time issues. I thought Skyrim Special Edition would be the final addition to the encyclopedia of games that broke my PC, but I realised that after testing this the first time that Cyberpunk was still running in the background and causing everything to freeze, even the Windows Explorer. Now, I'm not even sure how this happened, but after stopping it from within Task Manager, Skyrim Special Edition booted up and actually ran pretty well, all things considered. Sure, there are a few stutters here and there, but for the most part, the G2020T did okay. So what does the T stand for? Tremendous? Terrible? Titillating? Well, it actually stands for Power Optimized Lifestyle. Now, I'm no spelling bee champion, but I don't think any of those words start with T. Back to the games, and another title that did okay was Overwatch. We did see some frame rate dips, which again was to be expected, but our average frame rate wasn't that bad. According to some user reviews, this chip is slightly faster than an old 775 socket E8400 Core 2 Duo, but I think it probably exceeds that by a bigger margin these days thanks to the newer architecture. In Overwatch, the more enemies that are on screen, the more the frame rate dips, but this is unavoidable unless you just run around the outside of the map, which obviously isn't ideal for competitive gameplay. Now, under normal circumstances, Red Dead Redemption 2 will run fine with the Xbox One X equivalent settings, but we're not by any means running the game under normal circumstances. We saw around 20 FPS, which honestly isn't as bad as I thought. For a near 10-year-old 2-core CPU, this is quite surprising, and I do now wonder just how closely a Core 2 Duo would compare, though it might not even start the game. I'm not sure if Socket 775 chips have the necessary instruction sets required for RDR2. I've probably tested it before and realised the outcome already, but either way, the experience isn't going to be a smooth one. Finally then, it's The Witcher 3, which was quite frustrating because the game sometimes hit over 30 FPS, yet the percentile figures and the on-screen gameplay of course indicated huge drops. It's quite annoying because you get these short bursts of smooth gameplay and then the game just freezes and you think, come on, I know you can do it. Of course it can't, but honestly it's another better than expected result. Now there's not really much else to say about the G2020T. If you want a low power socket 1155 CPU for a cheap low cost system, then it's still fine for basic usage, or if you want to build an i3, i5 or i7 system on a tight budget but can't quite afford the CPU you want just yet, then it's certainly usable until you can, but not really from a gaming perspective. Those day-to-day tasks, and maybe even watching a few YouTube videos will be fine, even under Windows 10, but fire up most games and you're going to be pretty disappointed, but I think you knew that already. I always thought the G2020 came out quite close to the i3 2120 just because they were called similar things, but the G2020 actually released a couple of years after the i3, so it does make me think that at the time that this came out, was the i3 down to a price that was so close to this chip that it really wasn't worth considering the Pentium instead. With all that said then, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like on it down below. Leave a dislike if you didn't. Let me know if you've had any experiences with one of these chips or something similar, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next video.